So you took advantage of an historical moment. And how many scholars were awarded during that year?
For the Tun Ismail Ali, I'm the only one.
So you are 1 in 100 years.
Apparently.
The following is a long open conversation with Thessa Vasudhevan, a policy researcher at Inspire, with previous tenures at the ASB Center of Technology, Energy and Sustainability, and the Bank Negara Malaysia. Thessa made the national news in her country back in 2018 when she became the sole recipient of the Centennial Scholarship, honoring Tun Ismail Ali, the first Malaysian Governor of Bank Negara. We got a chance to sit and talk about many topics, like what is policy work, which are the main differences she saw in both United Kingdom and Southeast Asia, and which is the current thing she's working on right now. This is On the Long with FVR podcast. If you like this thing, feel free to like and subscribe and to contribute to the channel on the description below. And now, your feature presentation.
Do you usually have somebody else on the other side, or it's only you?
It's only me. It's usually only me. There was episode 8 that somebody was with the umbrella, helping that the equipment will not mess it up, but everything else has been just like how much time I have, how much the battery I have. So that's pretty much what has been going on.
Okay.
Can you imagine that yesterday was another holiday?
It's amazing, and that's why I love living in Malaysia. It doesn't suit you having too many holidays?
I mean, once you have the read going on to finish the week, all of a sudden it's like, why they have to make a pause? Why don't we just go all the way and finish the week? So that's the thing.
Wait, are we actually recording this for the podcast?
Usually that's part of the pre-talk.
No, let's not do this.
Okay, we start right now.
I'm
in
not ready.
3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode on The Long with FVR. Today we have Thessa. Thanks for doing this.
Very happy to. Finally. Sorry it took such a long time.
It's fine. At least you're doing it.
At least I'm here.
You know Bill?
Of course.
He wanted to do it.
Why is he not here?
He's in Philippines right now.
Okay, well, good for him. I know he's been wanting to go home for
Yeah,
some time.
and then he said that yes, he didn't have the time to do it.
Okay.
So that sounds like somebody who doesn't want to do it. So okay, good for him.
Bill, if you're watching,
Yeah.
you should be here, just so you know.
We know what you did. We know what you did. This is why we look at the camera.
Got it.
So people may be watching you and they will be like, so why is this person here? So I would like to ask you a little more about your background. So can you tell us a little more about yourself?
Yeah, okay, happy to. So my name is Thessa, and I used to work at Asia School of Business at the research center here, Center for Technology, Strategy and Sustainability. I have now moved on to my next job, which is going to be based out of the London School of Economics. There is a research center there called the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment, and I'll be doing a bit more of policy and research work, basically, on environmental risks, broadly speaking, and interfacing with the financial sector, with central bankers particularly. But basically I'm going to do a bit more research and I guess policy work around environmental policies.
Environmental policies.
It's a big word.
Policy and work. From the people who are working on the street, they always say that the politicians are not working. But this involves a lot of work. So can you tell what is an environmental policy?
Gosh, that is a big question. Okay, so when I say environmental policy, I think I'm referring to it very, very broadly, in the sense that we're talking about everything from how we manage our waste to economic policies, development policies, because obviously how we decide to develop our land and primary production, that's going to come back and affect the environment, the state of the environment, basically. So when I say environmental policy, I'm referring to it in a much broader sense of not just fines or environmental regulations, environmental laws, but also other areas of governance and policy that will have an effect on the environment. And when I say the environment, what I mean by that is basically not just the natural environment and nature that is pristine in our worldview, but also lived environments and the urban environment, and basically where humans and non-humans, nature, interact basically. So it's it's especially, I think, given we're living in a world of climate change, we're living in a lot of we're living in an age where the environment and humans are no longer as these, you realize how interconnected we are. So I think there's a different shift in thinking that's needed, how we actually view the environment and how we think about designing policies surrounding the environment.
I see that.
Yeah.
So usually takes all that into account to generate something that affects the daily life.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and you did an interview with IU previously on the energy system as well, right? And I mean, I think that's obviously there's a lot of intersection between environmental policy, energy policy, food security, etc., etc. So yeah.
That's important, especially in Southeast Asia and a country like Malaysia
Yeah.
that has so many fronts to actually answer, like the
Yeah.
energy, like the food security, also the environment, but health as well. Sorry for missing that one, which is very important. Now, we met during a project that was the coal transition. The most important thing that I remember was the collaboration that we had from people who were in the industry or formerly in the industry, like Paella and myself, to see how we can actually use our skills with somebody who was doing environmental policy like you.
Right.
So I would like to ask, from your point of view, how was working with these two guys that had no idea what is like a research center? They were from the industry.
Oh, wow, that's a great question. Well, okay, so my personal experience was I felt like I got to learn quite a lot from you guys because you came in with very sort of like practical perspectives of things, and you didn't necessarily get too bogged down by thinking in abstract or frameworks, Bill was very interested in the actual technical details of electricity generation, etc. And I thought it was actually very good to have somebody who had those more engineering type of skills. And I also think research typically, it's very easy for researchers to get hung up in ivory towers, basically, or for us to see things very much from like 50,000 feet above the ground, or to not really understand what are some of the challenges in implementing certain ideas or certain prescriptions that we think would be relevant, especially when it comes to policy making. Because as a researcher, you look at it from multiple different angles, and you try and understand how the different puzzles fit, and you point out what are the challenges in this. But it's not so easy to just come up and serve up solutions just like that, I think. And it was good working with you guys because maybe you have a bit more of an interest to find solutions quickly, perhaps. I don't know. That was maybe my perspective of it. And so your questions would be driven towards, what can we do about this, or how do we, if this is the problem, then why don't we have this to solve it? Which is relevant questions to ask even in the research process, I think. But yeah, I mean, the tricky thing was I don't think we had enough time to really, work throughout. I mean, for the project to run its full course, and it's a new topic for me as well. This whole transition issue. I don't have a background in energy policy whatsoever, so this was all a learning experience for me as well. And yeah, I didn't feel like we were coming at it from opposite ends of the spectrum or anything like that. I think it felt a bit more like we were learning together. So I enjoyed it.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Especially because of the short time frame and how the different things were going on in the external part.
Yeah.
Like the so-called graduation, which for me was commencement.
How was that, by the
So
way?
people were coming at me saying, congratulations, Fabian. And it's like, congratulations on what? Because there was no diploma.
Oh, you didn't receive a diploma.
There
did
was
you?
no diploma. It was just a picture that says, this is the survey that you need to fill.
Yeah.
And once you leave the country and you show the passport and the stamp that you left, then we're going to give the diploma to you. And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
that's good to know. Very good to know. That's what they're doing. So, having been a recipient of many other diplomas or even the graduation in the past, this is an evidence of one of those. I know what it's like to receive the diploma. So, people were like literally being, oh yeah, happy for you, and it's like, hey.
But you don't have
Not even my mother is happy for me. Okay?
What do you mean?
Because she saw what a graduation is. She saw what a diploma is. So it's like, yeah, whatever. They want you to do this, so you get a diploma. Yeah, good for them. And actually, I discussed a little more in our video when I was in Manila for some reason. I didn't mention that I actually was stranded in Manila.
No, you did not mention you were stranded in Manila. How did that
Well,
happen?
it was not stranded in Manila, but it was Thrilla in Manila. Thrilla in Manila, that's how I labeled it, because I want scheduled to visit Hong Kong. If you go through Philippine Airlines, you can carry up to 30 kilograms. But if you go through, let's say, AirAsia direct flight, it's only 7 kilograms. And it was also cheaper. The problem is, on that day, there was 8 planes of Philippine Airlines that went down. They couldn't start the engines. So the connections were non-existent. When I arrived in Manila, they mentioned, did you know that your connection is canceled? No, I was in the middle of the air. That's why I didn't know. And then there was a knife fight on that trade desk. Like, please get me my money or get me something. And they approached to me and it's like, we got you a hotel voucher and a transportation voucher. And it's like, so do you mean that tomorrow I'm going to be flying? Yeah. Okay, I can take that. So that's how I explored Manila. The problem was, they asked us to leave at 6 p.m. because the flight was at 10 p.m. During the day, they began to send emails. No, now you should leave at the hotel by 10 p.m. because the flight is going to be at 1 a.m. We arrive at the airport at 10 p.m. and then they delay the flight to 5 a.m. Okay, it was an event that happens maybe once every 5 years or something. Because then Philippine Airlines made the news. They are actually buying 9 new planes.
Oh, wow.
So, okay, I got it. You are concerned, you are aware of the problem, and you are solving it.
Right.
Respect for that. And then to return from Hong Kong, also through Manila, the connection was supposed to be at 8 p.m. on Sunday. It was delayed until midnight, and then wait until 7 o'clock. And then I arrived, I was receiving messages from the immigration and NBA office like, hey, where are you at? Where are you at? Like if I had a wife or something, where are you at? I'm in Hong Kong. Where are you in Hong Kong? Because I needed to give the passport to extend the student pass. So that happened. Fascinating that you mentioned this because in immigration, they actually saw the pass and it's like, expires end of June. But this is June 19. Aren't you supposed to cut it out? And it's like, well, I'm technically allowed to enter. I'm an extending.
Yeah, and also it's not over yet. It's not yet the end of June.
So that was my argument of defense.
Yeah.
Because they have the argument of attack to say, we should not let you enter. It's like, but the pass is still valid.
Yeah.
Yes or yes? Yeah. And it's like, yeah. So that happened. So, fascinating story of what happened. And also, I discovered.
Last week? Or
That was
a couple weeks back?
June 19.
Okay.
So it was like literally Monday of last week.
Gosh, wow. Here you are.
Yeah, that's
Now.
right. Imagine. But,
Glad you're back.
well, I guess.
You managed to come in. So when are you leaving?
So technically until August 30. Because I'm August 30.
Very nice.
August 31st is Independence Day,
Yes,
National Day,
yes.
and I believe that if I live there, okay, I'm still allowed to do that, but I'm not sure if they will allow me to extend the pass. So, wait a second. So, the thesis is leaving on August 31st, because if I leave on September 1st, which I'm still allowed, because the semester ends on September 1st, the place I am, the residency, they're going to charge me one
Extra
more day.
month.
Yeah, and it's like that can be a little too much.
Wait, so I don't understand though. On your passport, your
The stamp.
the stamp allows you to stay until which date?
So initially it was until June 27. Now the extension pass will be until the end of the summer semester,
And the summer semester ends on.
September 1st, September 2nd,
But
somewhere.
is there a date on
Yes.
your visa stamp?
Yeah, it always says that.
And the date written there is September.
September 1st or something. They're gonna tell me. So we are discussing this because it's important. Not many people that come here
Yeah.
will actually know which are the little things going around. And during these days, I actually saw some of my colleagues actually leave.
They had to leave.
They
earlier.
have to leave. So that's the thing.
Yeah, this is a problem indeed, and we don't have, I guess, enough like clarity as well on what exactly the procedures are and how to make it a bit more simplified. Maybe the process for students to be able to extend if they need to extend for whatever reason, or perhaps even if you have an internship or you have a work opportunity here, but then you can't do it, or it's very onerous for you to go and get their whatever permits, additional, like permits needed for that.
And I feel we are also deviating ourselves from the main topic,
Oh,
which
sorry.
is you.
Oh no.
So,
I didn't realize that was the main topic. I thought it was just the conversation.
well, the conversation is about the guest, right?
Okay.
So, about the guest, about Thessa, how was
Okay.
growing up in Malaysia? In which part you were, and how was that childhood going on?
Oh, that's a great question. I like talking about my childhood because it was a lot of fun. No, so I grew up, until I was 9 years old, I grew up in Cheras, KL, which is a very heavily populated place. Taman Cupex, to be specific. But 9 years and above, I went to Alur Gajah, Malacca, which is a very small town in the state of Malacca, about 1.5 hours south of KL. And it was basically, I did the opposite of sort of going from the small town to the big city. I think I went from like a big city and then a school of like 2,500 students or so to a school with like, I think 600 students or something like that. So, and it was nice actually. I really enjoyed that move. I'm glad I went to Alur Gajah, and I think I developed my love and passion for animals, for plants, for this sort of like harmonious living with nature. All of this was developed in Alur Gajah, Malacca, because my father grew up in Alur Gajah, in a kampung there, and I used to live with my grandparents for a few months when we moved back. And I basically, I don't know, I just really enjoyed being outdoors and playing with the kids in the kampong and coming back and helping my grandparents with the chickens and all kinds of things in the garden, basically. Yeah.
That's cool.
So and I think my dad has definitely imparted a lot of this philosophy, I suppose, on how we depend very much on nature for life, really, for sustenance, but also, in not just extractive way, but also, there is a genuine joy that comes from spending time with nature and the natural environment in the sense. But yeah, I never saw it as I am not part of nature. In fact, I very much felt like, I'm also very much part of this ecosystem, and whatever I do and how I consume or how I, plant or whatever it is will have an effect on how that the ecosystem continues to carries on, basically. So yeah, in a way, I think my childhood shaped my philosophy on why I'm interested in all these questions.
During that time you build your philosophy, you also encountered things that start attacking that.
Philosophy, yeah, absolutely.
So, how was those things, and how you actually managed to push them away?
Well, I don't think it was very structured or systematic in that sense. I think I'm still facing some of these challenges about how to live with this worldview of such a harmonious relationship with nature, but in fact, of course, there's a lot of chaos in that relationship too. And I've encountered this on a very personal level. For instance, with having dogs in a small taman. Taman is basically the neighborhood, and especially in Malaysia, when there's also not everybody feels like dogs are the most wonderful animals in the world, and not everybody would like to touch dogs, for instance, or some people think they are nuisances, and these kinds of perspectives also occur, and I remember one time I had a puppy who was hurt by basically somebody had poured oil on the body of the puppy when the puppy had ran somewhere close to their house. So and it was very traumatizing to see that. Of course, I wasn't so young at the time. I was already like young adult, I guess, and of course I felt angry. Of course there was rage, but at the same time, I don't know. I guess I made a decision at that point to do what I can to help the puppy in this situation, as opposed to, I don't know, going out and ranting about it or channeling my anger to the person or whatever it is, or trying to. Obviously, there is a need to also communicate and let people know that this is wrong and one should not treat animals this way. But maybe at that time, all I cared about was making sure that the puppy was fine, treating my puppy, and so I did that. And I don't know, I think spending a lot of the time with the puppy also made me, I don't know, there's something about spending time with animals that just make you a better person, I think, and develops all this loving and caring feelings and empathy and compassion, and it's, I guess, a similar kind of feeling when you're caring for a child or a baby. And so I feel like, in a way, sometimes when we're dealing with some harsh realities of the world that we live in and how people can be quite mean or sometimes even, just angry and can't deal with their emotions or have different ways of looking at things and channel it in a way that is harmful to another being, we kind of have a choice on how we are going to respond to that, right? It's either we can get as angry and we can sort of push back against them, or we can think about ways to maybe live more empathetically. And so I feel like that's something that my puppy taught me. and I try hard to carry that philosophy a bit more in the current work of, doing environmental research, environmental policy, thinking about financial risks from climate change or the environment, thinking about issues of indigenous people's rights, because I used to work with an organization based in Sabah that advocated for the rights of indigenous peoples in Malaysia. And of course, you come across lots of things that break your heart. You see massive deforestation, massive, ways in which people are not being treated the way that they should be, basically. And so, yeah, there's a lot of frustration in that. And I think maybe what brings me back to having that sense of hope that okay, we can do this is to to remind myself of how I have a choice on how I want to respond to these things, basically. And there is being trained as a lawyer. I wouldn't call myself a lawyer at all, but I did study law, and I think that helped me develop this sense of we can push back and we can fight back and change the way the systems work in the world, but you can't have that without also having a compassionate response, I think. So that's super philosophical, but
yeah, it's very important because nowadays a lot of people are starting to react instead to actually be more proactive. It's fascinating how you made the puppy a survivor instead of a victim, because it was the easy route.
It was absolutely a survivor. I mean, I was carrying it and obviously trying to treat it and all, but I saw the puppy is not, it's a resilient being as well. It's not just it's not just a victim. And I think it's a similar kind of approach we should have about when we think about human beings as well, and our own interpersonal relationships, like on a like, you know, basically the relationships that people have with each other, and sometimes it's very easy to victimize oneself or to also, you know, just paint the perpetrator as a perpetrator, and there's no black or white around it, or there's no gray area around it, and I think that can be problematic as well. We all have our issues, we all have our baggage, and things that we're each individually struggling with. But yeah, I mean, I think human relationships is it's something that requires a lot of work, and yeah.
Talking about work
Humanity.
and about your experience, you mentioned that you studied law. So when Young Thessa decided, I want to pursue that?
Yeah. When did
Young Thessa decided.
When did I decide I wanted to pursue law? Gosh, probably after I finished my SPM, which is the major exam that we still have, at the age of 17 in high school. And I got pretty good grades, and I was offered a scholarship from the government to do my undergraduate degree abroad. And I looked at the list of things. I could do economics, I could do law, I could do political science, I could do, of course, engineering and medicine. Like basically all these, you know, typical big fields of study. And I don't know, I guess I just felt like, yeah, I mean, I used to do debate. I think I could probably do well in law. I was also interested in, I guess, philosophical questions around this, about laws and rules and how we govern ourselves. So I decided to do that. But then I went to SOAS, School of Oriental and African Studies, which is based in London. And the school is really interesting because it used to be where colonial administrators would go to train before they were sent to the colonies. And this was obviously a long time ago, but then SOAS has changed, like, you know, dramatically over the years, and has become massively, I mean, they have a very strong anti-colonial band, and they're full of you know, people who are extremely fed up with the system, and there's a lot of, you know, you could basically extremely I mean, like, there's a bunch of hippies, there's a bunch of like anarchists and all, you know, and so it's a very interesting place to be, and I loved my undergraduate degree there. Actually, I loved my time there because it exposed me to, well, I guess I felt like, oh, I share a lot of these frustrations that these people have. But again, you know, there's so much humanity in that as well, and it was nice because I had a great group of friends. Yeah. But anyway, I did law there, and there I realized I didn't want to practice as a lawyer.
Okay.
Maybe because I don't know, it was very, I guess I had a strong Marxist influence at the time, and I was just very upset also with the way the legal system worked and things like that. So typical, you know, university student, like frustrated with the state of the world. But I decided to come back and work in advocacy, basically in NGOs, and especially with indigenous people's rights, because I don't know, that was just something that attracted me, I guess, or it spoke to me in a way. Yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question.
That's actually fascinating because you answered the call and you went to places that weren't heard before.
Okay.
And then you began to say, well, there's a different calling right now. You were able to actually make the move instead of just following a path that will not make you fulfilled anymore.
Yeah. No, I think my friends also who knew me from like college days, I think I was lucky because I was in environments where I was allowed to be that person who thought a little bit differently, who wanted to do things a little bit differently, and I had that support around me, I suppose, or like, you know, a supportive environment, and I think ending up in SOAS gave me also that confidence, I suppose, to say, well, actually, I don't have to go back and join a corporate law firm and do all these things. I mean, of course, life is going to be difficult financially, but I decided to do it anyways, at least for that time being, for that moment. And I never regret that. I don't regret it. In fact, I feel like I learned, or I become who I am, and I got the opportunities that I got afterwards because I made that call to, you know, go and work on these issues very much at the sidelines of the mainstream psychology, I suppose. And yeah, make extremely little or not make any money at all at the time. This was in 2017, 2018. I was working.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit, also volunteering and yeah, it was just a different world basically, entirely. And then I was very fortunate though. I was very lucky to. I applied for a master's program in Oxford and I got in, and then I needed to find financial aid for that because obviously I cannot afford that. So I was lucky to be able to apply to Bank Negara Malaysia. They had a one-off scholarship. It's called the Tun Ismail Ali Postgraduate Award, which was offered on that particular year only because it was the 100-year anniversary of Tun Ismail Ali, the first governor of the central bank, and they opened it up to the public for postgraduate study, which included masters and PhD.
And when they say to the public, is everybody.
Everybody, so not just Bank Negara staff, basically. Yeah, and it was it was actually the only. How do I say this? It was like the only real option available at the time for me to get the funding in time to start in my master's program in 2018. Of course, I tried other scholarships, but most of them were already, like, the deadline had passed. And then I started, I actually remember walking with my dad into the Malacca state government, like the office building, and we met with one of the youngest MPs in Malacca. Or I think he wasn't an MP, he probably was like a special officer to one of the MPs, and we spoke to him and asked if there was any resources available from the state itself to be able to fund me to go and study in Oxford. And we met very nice people, but nothing really transpired. And so BNM, the scholarship opportunity was really like the last or the only thing that would have given me that ability to go to Oxford and do this master's program, and I got it, thankfully. And then the rest is history, I suppose.
It's a history in the making.
Yes, history in the making, yes. So, yeah.
So you took advantage of an historical moment. And how many scholars were awarded during that year?
For the Tun Ismail Ali, I'm the only one.
So you are one in 100 years.
Apparently.
Wow, look at that. You see, we have high caliber people in the podcast. One in 100 years. That's amazing.
I feel super blessed to have gotten that opportunity even until now. Sometimes I can't believe I got it, gosh, yeah, but yeah.
And you used that opportunity to go to Oxford.
Yes.
What happened there?
So I did a master's it's a long title. It's called Masters in Nature, Society and Environmental Governance. And it's based in the School of Geography at Oxford, and School of Geography and the Environment, sorry. And it's basically a course that blends geography, anthropology, economics, governance studies more broadly, policy studies, a little bit of political science as well, and pulls all these different angles of looking. It's very multidisciplinary, and so it looks at the state of the world, and especially this question of the relationship between humans and nature, and also problematizes that relationship, or even those two categories, and asks these questions like, how have we ended up here? Why do we have such an extractivist economy? Why do we why do we have problems of massive exploitation of indigenous people's lands even now today, blah 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 blah. So it tries to unpack a lot of the knowledge systems that we've built our modern world upon as well. And so it's very theoretical also. The course is more theoretical than sort of like practical in the sense that you don't go there to learn how to make policy. You go there in a way to question a lot of things, I suppose, a lot of things that we've just accepted as the way in which the world is. But this tries to, put all of those things up in the air and say, can we reimagine this relationship?
You put everything up the air, so some things are gonna be grabbed and some things will fall.
Some things will fall, some things you let go of, basically. Yeah, but a lot of it was basically how do we reimagine this relationship between society and nature? How do we rethink the ways in which we can even design environmental laws? And what are some complications of governance? What are some obviously there's a lot of critique around capitalism as well, and a lot of critique on the economy, or the ways in which economists have in many ways run the world. So
you went there to put things up in the air and see how we can rebuild a relationship between humans and nature. You crafted new skills, let's say new weapons for the future.
In a way.
And you went back to Bank Negara. So what happened? How Bank Negara used those skills?
Oh goodness, this one you need to ask Bank Negara, not me.
Well, I need to ask because we have in context.
Yes.
Somebody wins an award that happens 1 in 100 years, and goes there and gets something that has not been done before, and goes to an institution. So I guess the institution will get some. So how was your experience there?
Gosh, this one I think we need another 5 hours for the podcast on this. But okay, wait. Before that, maybe let me clarify this.
Yeah, let's clarify. Let's clarify something.
Yes.
Because right now it's like, wait a
second.
second.
It's too much drama here. Okay, so in this course, right, a lot of it is not. How do I explain my master's program? So it gave me the tools.
Full disclosure.
Yes.
This is a conversation, a casual conversation.
Yeah.
There is no critique. This is just self-reflection.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So go ahead.
No, so I'm reflecting on this course, right? And what it did is, I think it gave me the tools to critique. It gave me the tools to critique some of these ways of governance that we have just received, or for whatever reason chosen to follow along when it comes to designing policies, when it comes to thinking about what is development, how should emerging economies continue to develop. These kinds of questions in the context of colonialism, or in recognizing the history of colonialism, recognizing how a lot of the current legal frameworks that we have is also inherited from colonialism, like all these sort of issues, right? This course gave me the tools and the avenues to ask these questions and to critique these issues, but it did not prepare me for thinking about how, given all this messed up world or this messed up history that we've had, and all these challenges, how then do we implement policies in this current sort of broken system, if you may, and how to do that in a world that is dominated by finance and economic ways of thinking, basically. So it's a very different discipline, right? Finance and economics is a very different discipline. You don't come in with the same questions that anthropologists come in with, for instance. And so, obviously, coming to Bank Negara after this master's program was a bit of a shock for me, because I was like, well, I know at the NGO world, I know the sort of like activism side of things, but how do I do that in a central banking context where, in a way, what you're trying to do is ensure stability, because central banking is about ensuring financial and monetary stability, keeping things running well, but it's not a place where you go in to throw everything up in the air. It's a place where you go in to try and distill and try and make sure you can implement things in a structured manner, in a more coherent way, or there's all these. I felt like it was a different approach that I needed to take. Basically, a different way of thinking, a different way of trying to do things, a different way of asking questions, which I think at the time when I first joined the bank, I didn't quite understand, and I don't know. I think I tried to do a little bit of both, or somewhere in the middle, and I don't know where I ended up. But no, I did. So I know this is all very abstract because I think this way, but I think I was very clear that what I wanted to do in Bank Negara was still something to do with sustainability, environmental issues, and I knew even when I applied actually for the scholarship, I went to them to say, look, this whole issue about the environment is going to blow up, and it's already blowing up. It's already a big problem that we're all facing today because of climate change and whatnot. But like, I told them that when I come back, what I wanted to do was actually think about these issues in the context of central banking, basically, and how should central bankers start to work with other ministries as well, because obviously you don't operate in a vacuum as well. Like financial stability and economic stability happens within a larger context of governance, or needs to happen in that way as well. So I said that I wanted to come back and work on broadly this issue of environmental or social sustainability, and when I came back, they had a team looking at climate change, because that was a big deal at the time. Even in 2018, 2019, there was something called the Network for Greening the Financial System, the NGFS, that was set up, and it had been, the membership of this network was growing around the time. Basically, central bankers and financial supervisors around the world had started to recognize that environmental risks mattered, basically, and the world is changing drastically, and how we do things, business as usual, is not going to apply anymore and should not apply anymore. And how should the central banking world deal with this, basically? So those are some of the broad questions. So I came in and I joined the team that was working on climate change risks, and a lot of it was very, I didn't get to do, how do I say this? A lot of it was trying to, first of all, build a narrative around that piece of work, because obviously you have a lot of people who question, like, what does central banks have to do with environmental sustainability? It seems like, worlds apart, for instance. We shouldn't be intervening in these things. These things aren't it's not part of our mandate, or we don't know anything about this. Why are we suddenly the people to come up and talk about these issues, or even propose solutions to them? Which is all very valid questions, and I think my biggest job for the first few months was really just trying to build a case for this. Why should we think about this? Why should we care? Why should this matter to us?
So Thessa the lawyer was meeting Thessa the Master of Oxford, and the Thessa from the central bank to work together to make a case.
Yes, many Thessas needed to work together. Yes, yeah, I guess you could say that.
Okay.
So that was my work for the first year or so. Of course, I did quite a lot of things, which right now I don't remember all of it, because there's been lots of things that has happened since. But I think one of my, I guess, proudest thing from my time in Bank Negara was working on another study in collaboration with the World Bank, which was basically about understanding environmental risks beyond climate change. So we, instead of just thinking about, obviously climate change is a massive problem, is a massive issue, and even that is such a big thing to unpack, and I don't want to do that now, but a lot of the financial attention, or the attention from the financial world, has been about climate change as an environmental issue, right? But especially in developing economies, we have massive problems with deforestation, with water supply, water security, water access, with energy issues, with which obviously all of these things have interlinkages with climate change. But in a way, they're also separate issues, right? And pollution is a massive problem. And basically, this project, this research project that I work with the World Bank, asked the question: what are some of these other environmental issues that could actually be maybe more pressing, more immediate, or also more varied and have very different ways of materializing in the financial world, and how should central bankers start to think about this? Can we even begin to estimate some of these issues? I mean, these risks, how they occur? Can we start to think about what scenarios that might happen that have an impact on the macroeconomy, which will ultimately come back and affect financial stability as well? Like, so all of these environmental, I'm calling it environmental risk because this is the term that we use more, I mean, like we tend to use in this field, but in a more human way, it's basically all these environmental issues that we have in places like Malaysia, which is a mega diverse country, and you have obviously a lot of, you know, biodiversity, and we're very blessed because we have all of our, you know, wealth in a way comes from the fact that we have had massive timber resources in the past, which have all obviously been extracted, and you know, we deforested these lands, and then of course oil and gas, and now we have palm oil. But all of these things are, yeah, like commodities essentially that we have just used, and I mean export oriented commodities, and not really thinking about how we channel the values of this to benefit the people within the country across different stages. I mean, across different classes and all. So, I mean, yeah. So it's an economic question. It's also a governance question, and also I think it's an environmental philosophy question as well. What is this relationship that we have within? So anyway, that was my background coming into this report with the World Bank, obviously very much within the context of financial risks, central banking. So it's called an exploration of nature-related risks in Malaysia, and I was very lucky and very happy to work on this project with the World Bank counterparts, and yeah, it took about how many months? Less than a year. And then we launched it in March 2022, published the report, and it felt, I mean, we were like the first, I guess, central bank in Southeast Asia, in Asia, to look at this issue. There were 4 other central banks looking at it in the whole world at the time, and so it felt, I guess, good to also be like, you know, one of the earliest to point out, hey, wait a second, these are some of the other issues that we should be thinking about, and not just jump on the bandwagon of the climate change enthusiasm. Pay attention to some of these other things as well. And yeah, and I guess that's why I've also been fortunate to now move into this new role at LSE, because that is the focus of this program at LSE, to try and help financial supervisors in Southeast Asia particularly grapple with these questions and with this problem of what do we do with some of these environmental risks, broader environmental risks that that actually are very prominent in this region particularly. In other regions, of course, in South America too, of course, like Brazil Brazil actually did a study on this too, and they have some interesting policies around whether or not money can be channeled to protected areas, of course, within and also what sectors of the economy that they prioritize in terms of lending. So there's a lot of interesting things happening across the world around this, but I still think we have more questions than answers at this point of time. And so I guess that's what I want to do when I go to LSE, think a little bit more deeper about these issues, sustainable development. Yeah, and I think it's difficult. It's difficult to do because sometimes it feels like the problems are so large and complex, and you know, and different pace of different countries trying to tackle this problem as well. And yeah, I don't know. It's challenging, and sometimes I think I also realize those questions that I was interested in my master's program, in my degree, undergraduate degree, they still I guess, haunt me in a way. In terms of why haven't we solved this problem yet? Like, it's been many years. You know, we've been thinking about these issues for a long time. But of course, maybe it's a long game.
Talking about things that can take a longer time than usual, those questions from the past and possibly questions in the future, I need to ask you, which was the most difficult compromise you did, and why it was so difficult?
In the research work, or in my practical life, or in BNM, or what are we talking about?
You can choose.
Gosh. Okay, I know. Actually, I know one thing stands out for sure. I guess, so you know, in the ESG paradigm, there's environment and then there's social and there's governance, right? And I used to think that, I'm coming in from all these angles, basically. Or like, I'm interested in all these angles, and I try and think about all these issues contemporaneously. But I know in Bank Negara, because the focus is very much on the environmental side of things, or at least where I was situated, the work, the team, that field of work that I was doing was very much focused on the environment side of things. And I felt like my biggest compromise was that I lost maybe the ability, or I had to choose to focus on that, when in fact my background working with indigenous peoples, and of course having studied law, I care very much about the social side of things. I care very much. It's not like I'm not just a tree hugger and somebody that just wants to live in the forest and have a wonderful time there, but I care very much about how, people especially in communities, rural communities, but also just lots of normal people that live even in Bangi, for instance, where there's massive problems with waste and rubbish everywhere and things like that. I'm just thinking like surely there's a better way to live, and surely the policies and the governance mechanisms that we have in the country should do better at just making sure that you have proper places to dispose of your rubbish, for instance, and not just by the roadside. Simple things like that. Like, these things bother me a lot. But of course, there's like, what can you do as a central banker or somebody working in the central bank and thinking about environmental risks? What can you do about these things? And I guess the compromise that I made was just in terms of like trying to narrow down maybe my focus, or channel this passion towards building the momentum of work on climate change and environmental risks in the context of central banking, which I still feel was, sometimes it's hard when you do that, and obviously this is very much high-level policy making, and a lot of it was still building awareness stage. A lot of it was like, getting people to understand the narrative, think about these things, but you don't see much action or implementation yet, and it'll take a long time before you get there. And I mean, maybe that the SOAS Thessa in me was frustrated because, well, we need to see a result sooner. Come on, like, it's going to take forever to get all the central bankers to agree that yes, this is something we care about, and yes, we're going to start thinking about financial policy instruments to deal with these issues. Like, I don't know how long we have to wait for that. And meanwhile, a whole bunch of people that I used to work with, when I was working in Borneo, for instance, or even here in Peninsular Malaysia, and people who are still on the ground, still doing community work, still helping with advocacy, lobbying, but also just all like legal cases on land rights issues. All these sort of things are still battling day to day for the current, for wins or challenges that they're facing now. So that's it's sort of to feel like I have gone this way and then kind of maybe neglected some of these other on ground issues that I also care about. Maybe that's the biggest compromise.
This is very enlightening, because when somebody says they have no compromise, that should be a red flag.
I agree.
Because when you have compromise or you did something, it means you actually live. And I'm really honored to hear all of this, especially the dissection and the consequences that each of those sides of the decision actually were. And you mentioned about SOES Thessa, because there was also a lawyer's Thessa, there was a central bank Thessa. So how many? And the better question is, which is the Thessa you are more comfortable with?
Oh, good Lord, I don't know. These are such hard questions, Fabian.
Oh, come on, I mean, you only know the answer, right? I'm only asking
I know.
questions.
I know. Which is the dominant Thessa?
Well, not the dominant, but the one that you're more comfortable with.
Most comfortable with. Okay. That's a better way of framing it. Actually, in all honesty, and maybe this is tied a little bit to the question about compromise, right? I didn't yet say about the compromise in terms of work versus life, like personal life or family, for instance, because that is something as a person, as a human being, and not just as somebody who is thinking about work all the time. Obviously, like, that is a much bigger part of there's a Thessa that exists in the personal family space as well, right? So I guess I'm most comfortable as that girl in Alu Gajah that does a lot of, or spends a lot of time with her parents and the dogs and the chickens and the fishes and the plants and the mango trees and whatnot. But I think the trick is trying to carry that Thessa a little bit in all the different Thessas that exist. I don't know.
That resounds very well, because how many times you heard, oh, look at that, people change that they forgot who they are, or look at those old men, they forgot the kids they used to be. So that's actually very resounding.
Yeah, I think it's important, maybe, because obviously we do want to change and grow as humans, as individuals, right? But I feel like there's also lots of things that we can learn from the child that we were, and experiences that we've had whilst growing up. They have sort of imprinted, things on us. And of course, there's issues with that too. Or there's things that you don't necessarily want to carry with you for the rest of your life. But I don't know. Like, for me personally, this philosophy, this way of looking at the world is something that maybe I care, or that matters a lot to me, and I feel like is a big part of who I am. And that is the Thessa that I just feel most comfortable with, I guess.
You mentioned the world, and you have been in many regions, let's say from United Kingdom to the Borneo Island and also the peninsula and other places. So you saw some differences, and I want to ask you, which are the little differences about these regions?
Differences about the regions? I mean, Sabah, Penampang, which is where I used to be based in Sabah, is exceptionally different from London, just from an urban built environment point of view, but also, of course, people-wise, it's a different way of life. In Sabah, especially when I was working there, have to cross the river from a village called Kampung Nampasan, which is where I used to live. Cross a hanging bridge to go to the town center, and walk up the stairs, and it's like a small office environment. I used to sleep in the office sometimes, and cockroaches running around on the floor and things like that. And that was not my life in the UK when I was in Oxford or in SOES, studying and living there. Of course, life was a lot more comfortable there in many ways. But what else? Differences.
Why do they use spoons in Malaysia?
Why do they use
Like,
spoons? Actually, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, every time I want to eat with the fork, I use the knife, and it's like we have spoons.
Well, it's just a lot better at scooping rice, no? Because it
You
doesn't
use
fall
the
off.
fork. No, with the fork you can do that. So
No, but you use the spoon so that the
to
rice
cut
doesn't
the meat.
fall off.
I need to cut the meat. Okay, so I want to understand. I come from a place that seeks to understand.
Okay.
Why the spoon?
Okay, why the spoon? Okay, so rice is something that we have come to eat a lot more of here, right? It's a staple here. It hasn't always been a staple, even in this region.
So
but
it wasn't. It wasn't in the past.
not necessarily. I mean, it depends on how far back you go, I guess, and which community you lived in. But I think even like in some of the Orang Asli villages that I've been very privileged to visit and get to know them. Like, I mean, cassava or not cassava, what do you call it? Ubi kayu, which is tapioca. It's not cassava.
Uh-huh.
Tapioca is a big, it's a staple because it grows in the wild as well, and you don't have to have large areas to plant rice because paddy fields requires a lot more intense agricultural efforts compared to having like tapioca, any kind of like root type of plants basically. But now because this part of the world we have farmed rice for a long time, and that has become the staple. And I don't know. I don't think I know enough about why the spoon, but like my point is, it is a lot more practical to use the spoon to scoop rice instead of using the fork because you get the rice falling in between the cracks of the forks. But in your question on meat, I also think we probably didn't eat as much meat here, perhaps back in the day. I don't know, maybe. This is me imagining that even if you did eat meat, you'd use your hands basically. Perhaps, and this idea of having a knife to cut the meat into nice slices and then use a fork and put it in your mouth, it feels a bit, feels a little bit posh maybe, I don't know.
What do you mean posh to use the fork and the knife? Okay, this is a good context.
I don't know.
Because I got your point of view. It really
Please
feels.
don't put this on the podcast.
It really feels good that you grab like let's say the piece of brisket and you eat it with your hand, or you grab the drumstick. I got it. But I have other friends that when they come here they ask, why the spoon all the time? And I'm also trying to understand it's maybe because of the rice or maybe something cultural. Even when you have the chicken and you want to cut, you need to use a spoon. Maybe because the chicken is a soft.
It's already tender, yeah.
It's tender, but if you give you a steak, it's gonna take longer.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
those things.
Yeah, and I think maybe also like we don't eat steaks as much here. That's not.
Yeah,
that's not really
I realize
a big
that.
deal. Yeah. So what are oh man, I'm trying to. It's like usually even when we cook, like for Indian food, for instance, right? The way in which we prepare and cook meat, mutton, especially if you've ever had during Deepavali, like mutton varavel or mutton paratal, the meat is all cut into small cubes. It's not a big slab of meat that is served. We don't have this idea of serving a big slab of meat, which the individual then needs to cut. The cook will do all the cutting basically and preparing and mixing it with all the wonderful spices and the sauces and the curry, and it's in curry, which is also not something that you would put a big slab of meat in. So, and it's likewise if it's Chinese food, when you're boiling soup, like whether it's soup with pork or the whole chicken, for instance, a lot of herbal soups, things like that. Even if you put the entire piece of meat in, it's not the star dish itself, like taking out the whole piece of meat, the chunk, and then having somebody needing to cut it into smaller pieces. That's not how you serve the soup.
Gotcha.
It's usually very tender already by the time it arrives with the person that's eating it. So I guess in a way we never really needed
That brings a lot of context.
The knife to cut it into small pieces. And like when you have curry also, and you have like basically curry or soup with rice, it's wet as well, right? The rice is wet, so you don't maybe want to be using the fork for that, like when you don't get all the flavor, like a nice bite of it. So that's why the spoon comes in handy.
I see it now. Yeah, that brings a lot of more context. I'm learning something.
Somebody needs to write a book about this.
Or we are already doing something
Maybe,
already.
yeah, I know. That's
Now,
a great question.
you mentioned about the Indian cuisine, and when people see you, they may assume you are from Indian heritage. So how is it growing and living as an Indian Malaysian in Malaysia?
Okay, so first of all, I'm Chindian. So my mom is Chinese, my father is Indian. I'm a mix of Chinese and Indian, which is why I talk about Chinese and Indian food.
It's very singular that you mentioned it now. Yeah, because you don't look like all the Indians in average, but also you don't look as close as all the Chinese in average, at least in Malaysia.
Yeah,
So,
no.
how you say Chindian?
Chindian.
Okay. How is growing up as a Chindian? Which are the things going on?
It's great. I mean, it's nice because you get the best of both worlds, I guess, and the worst of both worlds, unfortunately. But no, it's just very multicultural. My father's family and my mother's family are both very big. Like they have lots of siblings, and I'm very, it's great to be able to celebrate all the Indian festivals and the Chinese New Year, and grow up being exposed to such a dynamic world of cultures. I also went to a predominantly Muslim boarding school for my entire secondary school life. Basically, from the time I was 13 until 17, I went to boarding school, and this was very. There was a majority Muslim population in the school, basically, and I passed. I mean, I looked very Malay actually. Growing up, especially.
Yeah, you look like a typical Malay from Malacca.
Yeah.
Episode 30 features Dr. Khadija. She
Okay.
resembles some of your features as well.
Interesting, very interesting. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I have nothing bad to say about being Chindian. It's like, it's nice, but I think I'm also, because I genuinely believe that I've had the most Malaysian experience in the sense that I have, a lot of Indian heritage and also Chinese heritage, but then I went to school with a lot of Malay friends and had a blast with them as well. Got to do lots of, got to live as how in the context of Malay and Muslim life, and everything from like prayer times to praying before eating, all these sort of things, and great like things to learn and to incorporate as well, I think. So I got to do that, and then I got to work with indigenous peoples, orang aslis here in Peninsula, the various different groups. Not all the different groups, of course, but I did, get to meet some Tamiar people, some Temuan people, especially, and then some of the Kadazan Dusun and the Murut groups in Sabah, and other friends from Sarawak and all. So I don't know. I guess I just feel it nice to be exposed to so many different cultures in Malaysia. Not that I know all of them intimately, but yeah, it's nice growing up in this environment.
Yeah, that brings a lot of light because not many people actually see that from abroad. When they hear the region, they only hear one or two countries, and that's how they actually enter into this. That remembers me a quote from Tim Dillon, because comedian from New Jersey.
Yeah.
In all his jokes, he usually makes also a lot of sense. Why these people go and stay 1 or 2 weeks in Europe? Go live in Spain and see how they work and how they live. And it's like, go to Southeast Asia, explore, see how they live. And then you understand that the culture is more than what you see in the pictures.
Absolutely.
So that's something, part of the added value that I guess I have to say, coming to this part of the world, getting the MBA in association with MIT, is because you don't hear the things, you see them with your eyes.
You see them, you experience them, and sometimes a lot of it is not. So this is maybe a struggle that I have sometimes. A lot of it is also not very easy to put frameworks and definitions to. Sometimes a lot of these things are, I don't know how to say, but you just feel it. Like sometimes, like how when you interact with somebody of a different culture, and yes, you might come in with a completely different worldview or lived experience or whatever it is, but then there's always something that you can find that you can connect with, and I think maybe growing up in a diverse environment allows you to practice that skill, or practice that ability to always find something that you can connect with people on, even though of course there's lots of differences in the way you do things, but maybe that's something that reminds us about common humanity, values, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know.
I would say.
Or some maybe not so common. Who knows? Yeah.
Because imagine an alien that comes from other planet and see, they will say, oh, look at that, they have the same values that we have. There will be nothing like, okay, it's not only human, it transcends humanity. Yeah, which is always good.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to ask, given all this has been going on, what are you working on right now? What is something that you're cooking?
Actually, right now, I am pausing. So not cooking anything at the moment except for trying to, I guess, prepare to move to London. I'm leaving in about 3 weeks time. And I just finished, I say that having just come back from Jakarta for some work there, working with, basically I ran a workshop with Bank Indonesia, the Central Bank in Indonesia, on this topic of environmental risks. That was a 1 week workshop. And just writing up something on this, and then in the meantime doing a bit of reading and learning, studying, so a bunch of things that I need to read. So in terms of, coming back to this question about sustainable development in this region. And then once I go to London, I will start, I don't know, a couple of new research projects. We have some interesting thoughts about exploring deforestation issues a bit more in this region, thinking about using different methods of not monitoring, I suppose, deforestation, but also thinking about how the financial sector can maybe start to look to explore other data sources in terms of tracking where their financing is going to, whether or not it's actually ending up in massively deforested areas or not, and things like that. But these are all, they're just brewing at the back of my mind. Nothing on paper yet. Right now I think I just need a bit of a pause to transition.
It's like that freight train that can go quick. It can only go quick because it has the brakes.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. I think maybe this break is long time. Needed for a long time already, so I'm ready for the break.
Oh yeah. You know, having so many lessons and witnessing that there is more than one Thessa. There will be some young Thessas watching this, and they will like to ask you something, but most of those will have one question in common. What piece of advice will you give to your younger self?
Okay, yeah. I actually met some people who I saw a little bit of Young Thessa in Jakarta last week. And I guess basically, when I say that, I mean people who care a lot about things and want to do things, but struggle also because it's difficult and it's challenging, and sometimes you just don't know where to look for the answers. I know this it might sound cliche, but actually it's okay to not know what the answers are, and it's okay to not know where to look sometimes. I think all the small wins that I've had and the big wins that I've had have come from being willing to test my boundaries a little bit, to kind of rove in between, or to really, be willing to explore and dive into things that you're not familiar with, but also remember remember to let go a little bit more, because sometimes it can feel you can get very depressed, disappointed, frustrated if you're somebody that wants to change things all the time, then you don't see things happening as fast. And just remember that you're doing your little part, and you just chip away, and don't forget to enjoy that process, because actually it can be pretty fun, and do something that you care about with people that make you feel good, people that make you feel like you can be yourself and care about these things. Celebrate that, and you'll find the answers along the way, especially if you're working in this, in sort of like social issues or environmental issues. Having that really good supportive group, people who care about similar things, makes a huge difference, because it can feel quite lonely and isolating sometimes when you're working on these things alone. And I'm very happy that I got to work with you and Bill, actually, because sometimes research work can also feel very alone. Lonely rather. And then the team at CTSS was great also. I was very happy that I got to do that with ASB. And of course the team in Bank Negara, the sustainability unit there. So I think, to maybe get out a little bit of your own heads and all these ideals maybe that we have, step out a little bit more and connect with people, take things one step at a time.
I cannot find a better way to end an episode like this. How can people find you? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you Twitter?
I am on LinkedIn. I'm extremely not active on LinkedIn, but I hope to be when I move to London. You can find me on LinkedIn for sure as a start, and then I'll take it from there.
Tessa, thank you for doing this. I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad.
And for people out there, please stay safe and see you when I see ya. Bye.
Bye.
And that's it.